Wind 300 at 16, runway 31 left, clear for land.
Mirroring its impact on aviation, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on airline companies. Due to travel restrictions and a slump in demand among travelers, several airlines have declared bankruptcy, with some ceasing operations. While other airlines reported historic reductions in flights, as well as accelerating retirements of certain types, such as a Boeing 747 or the Airbus A340. By the 8th of October 2020, 43 commercial airlines had gone bankrupt, and many more were expected to follow. In late October 2020, ACI Europe stated that 193 mostly regional of the 740 airports in Europe were also risking bankruptcy. On the 11th of February 2020, Air Italy ceased operating. This decision was made following the shareholders' meeting of Air Italy. According to the airline, its flights were operated by other carriers according to the original schedule between 11 and the 25th of February. On the 19th of February, Air Italy reopened ticket sales for two public service obligation routes, Milan-Linate and Rome-Fiumicino, and planned to operate them between the 14th of March and the 16th of April 2020, the date of public service obligation contract expiry. The airline operated the routes until the 3rd of February 2020, when the Albia Costa Smeralda Airport closed due to maintenance works for 40 days. Turkish airline Atlas Global collapsed on the 12th of February 2020. British airline Flybe, already struggling financially prior to the virus outbreak, entered administration on the 5th of March 2020 due to the effects of the pandemic. Charter airline Miami Air International filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on the 24th of March, and ceased all operations on the 8th of May. Trans-States Airlines, the sister company of Compass Airlines, which is also on this list. On the 17th of March 2020, the CEO sent a memo to employees stating that due to the impact of the pandemic on travel demand, the airline would cease operations on the 1st of April 2020. The Italian airline Ernest Airlines collapsed on the 5th of April 2020. Compass Airlines, a United States regional carrier that operated some flights for American Eagle and Delta Connection, permanently ceased operations. On the 19th of March, Brabants Regional Airlines announced that they would reduce flight frequencies. Later, they decided to call for a break. All of their employees in Sweden are temporarily furloughed. CityJet, an airline notable for its flights to and from London City Airport, filed for bankruptcy due to financial issues inflamed by the pandemic. Virgin Australia reduced 8,000 out of 10,000 employees, redundancies and temporary layoff. The airline formally applied for voluntary administration on the 21st of April 2020. However, as of that date, flights are still operating and talks about the future of the airline are continuing. On the 26th of June 2020, administrators announced they had agreed to sell Virgin Australia to American private equity firm Bain Capital. This was approved by creditors on the 4th of September 2020. Despite bondholders, Singaporean hedge fund Broad Peak and Hong Kong investor tore themselves wanting to put a bid in to buy the airline. Air Mauritius entered voluntary administration to safeguard the interests of the company and its stakeholders, after coronavirus-related disruptions made it impossible for the airline to meet its financial obligations. The airline was seeking to change its business model to address pre-existing financial problems, when the pandemic had a major impact on its revenue. The airline plans to continue operating. In April 2020, German Airways filed for insolvency, with plans to restructure due to the cancellation of Eurowings' wet lease contract for their entire Bombardier DHC-8 fleet. Avianca, the second-largest airline in Latin America, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New York City and liquidated its subsidiary Avianca Peru on the 11th of May 2020. Thai Airways announced plans to restructure the company under a bankruptcy court. Thai Prime Minister announced that the Thai government, which owns a majority stake in the airline, would not allow the airline to declare bankruptcy formally. On the 20th of May 2020, the Ecuadorian government decided to liquidate TAME and ceased all operations. The airline, which had been struggling for several years, claimed that its difficulties were compounded by the impact of the pandemic. LATAM Airlines Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the United States for the company and its subsidiaries. In Chile, the US, Ecuador, Colombia and Peru on the 26th of May 2020. On the 17th of June 2020, LATAM Airlines Group announced it would cease operations of its subsidiary, LATAM Argentina, with all aircraft returned to lessors and all employees laid off immediately. On the 18th of June 2020, Level Europe announced that it would cease business operations with immediate effect and enter insolvency. On the 23rd of June 2020, SunExpress announced SunExpress Deutschland would cease operations in 2020 and will be orderly liquidated. Its route network would be partially taken over by SunExpress and Eurowings. One Airlines announced on the 24th of June 2020 that it has ceased operations due to the hard financial situation caused by the pandemic. The owner and chairman blamed the competition from Sky, JetSmart, and LATAM, which are offering charters at prices that one cannot compete with, and the lack of financial support from the Chilean government, making one's operation non-viable during the present and near future. Knox Scoot went out of business the 26th of June 2020 as it couldn't recover from the pandemic's impacts. The board of directors decided on Friday to liquidate the airline, which left 450 staff members unemployed. Knox Scoot returned 3 aircraft from the 5-jet fleet to the parent company in Singapore by the end of June. On the 27th of June 2020, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda announced that LIAT would be liquidated following a series of unsuccessful months, due to COVID-19. The airline will be formed into a new entity that will provide vital connections between the Caribbean islands. The sale process of Italy's flag carrier Alitalia was accelerated, and the Italian government cut deadlines for interested investors to submit offers. Between the weeks of 2 and the 9th of March, when the Italian government announced a national lockdown, Alitalia's capacity in international flights fell by 22%. South African Airways received several billion rand in government aid in early 2020. But the airline had already been under voluntary business rescue since the 5th of December 2019. Stricken by pre-existing debts and pandemic-related revenue losses. Analysts commented that the airline had effectively already collapsed when the government rejected a request for another 10 billion rand in aid in mid-April. Business rescue practitioners gave the airline's unions the 24th of April deadline to agree to a plan to wind down the company, stating that liquidation would commence if no agreement was reached. On the 21st of July 2020, JetTime announced it had filed for bankruptcy, after having discharged most of its employees in June due to COVID-19. However, the owner expects and is preparing for a reconstruction in the new company JetTime to resume operations after the pandemic. The JetTime CEO, a number of key employees, and 5 of JetTime's Boeing 737 airplanes are being transferred to JetTime. On the 4th of August 2020, Virgin Atlantic filed for bankrupt protection from creditors in the U.S. The airline sought the protection under Chapter 15 of the United States Bankruptcy Code, allowing it to shield assets in the country. On the 5th of October 2020, the Air Asia Japan ceased operations due to low demand caused by the pandemic. On the 21st of October 2020, Cathay Pacific announced that Cathay Dragon would cease operations immediately, after publishing plans to cut 5,900 positions across the group. Raven Air, a regional airline based in Alaska, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, temporarily ceased all operations, and laid off all staff on the 5th of April 2020. Interjet, the third largest Mexican airline, which only flies domestically and is based in Toluca International Airport, was reported to be near bankruptcy on the 3rd of November 2020. After it shut down operations on 1 and the 2nd of November and its personnel went on strike due to 2 months of unpaid wages. On the 18th of November 2020, Norwegian Air announced that it would file for examinership in Ireland,